Bad news became a bad game for the Dodgers. Dustin May is out for the season. What went wrong and what are the Dodgers going to do now? And then the Dodgers played a baseball game and they didn't have much pitching left to help them out. And the offense put up 7 runs, but it wasn't enough. So we're going to talk about that as well. That's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube, and you can find us simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you got to do is listen every day and making it easier on yourself by subscribing in each or both of those places so you get notified when our episodes are up. Is this your first time listening or watching? I'm Vince Samperio and joined by my co-host, Jeff Snider. We're both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team before, cover the team now with this podcast, and we've been in the clubhouse, been in the locker room, been at Dodger Stadium plenty of times in our lives, and we're here to share some of that, what we think is baseball and Dodger knowledge with you every weekday morning, every Monday through Friday, and that's what we're here to do today. Unfortunately, today won't be too much of a hype episode. The Dodgers lost the game, but that wasn't the biggest loss of the day. The Dodgers also found out that Dustin May is lost for the season and more than likely the first half of next season. And yeah, Jeff, it was something we weren't hoping for. We were hoping May could come back in at least some kind of capacity before the season ended. But now he's getting surgery, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and the only thing that makes me feel better is I wasn't counting on him, just like I'm not counting on Walker Buehler, although it would have been nice even if both of them came back and pitched to the bullpen. We've talked about that as a possibility of them being bullpen pieces late in the season and in the postseason. And that's not going to happen with May. We'll see what happens with Buehler. But you wonder what new development happened. And I assume we'll get more information as time goes by, because obviously it wasn't bad enough to require surgery when he got hurt. And or at least they didn't. I assume they ran all the tests they needed to run at the time, and it didn't need surgery, and now it does. So either that means that he hurt it worse during rehab, or subsequent scans showed more. But whatever it is, yeah, it's pretty lousy news for the Dodgers. Really lousy news for Dustin May. I feel terrible for him. I worry that he's kind of like Jacob deGrom, that just the human body isn't meant to do what he can do for very long without getting hurt. And I'd love if he could have at least the peak of Jacob deGrom. DeGrom was healthy long enough to win a couple Cy Young awards and be really, really good, and have people talking about potentially the Hall of Fame, even if it's not super realistic. Dustin May hasn't even gotten that far yet. It's rough for him. And, it's in addition to his flexor tendon, they're doing a revision on his Tommy John surgery, which I assume means they don't have to replace the ligament, but they need to go in and, restaple it to the bone, or, you could tell I'm not Dr. Neil Elatrash, but whatever they do in Tommy John surgery, seems like they need to do some of that just without a brand new ligament. So it's rough. He's going to be out basically another year from now.
Yeah, the report from the LA Times says surgery will repair a grade 1 sprain to his flexor tendon as well as a grade 2 sprain to his UCL. So I guess strengthening around the UCL, whatever. I would imagine what happened is that they knew this, but they were hoping the PRP injection could help it out. As we've seen before, guys have tried to opt out or get out of surgery by getting the PRP injection. I mean, I've always said, once you get the PRP injection, you're basically just getting surgery anyways. Unfortunately, that's also what happened here. But like I said, we might get more details coming out. He's supposed to get surgery July 18th, so in a couple weeks. But yeah, I mean, obviously, big loss for the Dodgers. But Dustin May, the human, the person, the player, all thoughts and positivity to him. It's got to say, you just had a year-long rehab. You come back. You weren't quite what you wanted to be at the end of last year. You started maybe feeling like you were getting back to where you were beginning of this season, and now you have another basically year-long rehab. So it sucks for him. But yeah, for the Dodgers, I mean, like I said, they have a rotation at the moment. It's not necessarily the rotation they want. I don't think this really changes anything in terms of what they're going to be looking for at the deadline. It just changes what could have been, if the deadline's too expensive and they'd be like, you know what, let's count on this. But also too, like last year, they tried to do this with Walker Buehler, and we were counting on Walker Buehler a little bit, maybe a little bit too much. And then it didn't work out, and then they didn't get, necessarily somebody huge at the deadline, or they maybe didn't address what they needed to address. And then they kind of went into the postseason limping a little bit without the best arm they could have had. So I guess if there's one thing, now for sure, like, hey, we need a starting pitcher.
Yeah. And it also impacts what they're going to do in the offseason, I think, because, they do have a lot of young talent, but, we don't know if Kershaw will be back next year. We don't know if Julio will be back next year. And so it's like right now it's Tony Gonsolin and Bobby Miller and Emmett Sheehan and Gavin Stone next year. And, that's a lot of talent, but as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, that talent doesn't always perform. And I don't think you want to go into a season with, a full rotation of guys that young and, and then filling it out with a fifth young guy, so whether that is Shohei Ohtani, although Ohtani left his start on Tuesday, I think it was just a blister. So presumably nothing too major. But whether it's Ohtani and somebody else, or, Dodgers are going to be on the market for starting pitching this offseason, obviously, unless they get a couple starters who are under team control past this season at the trade deadline. But yeah, it's rough news for Dustin May. He's very likable, very, he's a fan favorite. Everybody loves Dustin May, and it's pretty rough for him.
Yeah, and also, I mean, on that point of maybe getting somebody with an extra year of team control, maybe that's someone they start looking at. There's a lot of rentals and stuff that are always going to be there, but maybe the Dodgers do target someone like that. Like we've said before, they're going to have to trade some of these young guys, and just for the simple fact of a roster crunch when it gets to the offseason. So maybe that's someone, they target. Maybe that's where a name emerges that we maybe hadn't even thought about, or hasn't really been out on the market or speculated for, somebody with extra team control beyond this year, just based on the simple fact of what you just said. Like they have a lot of unknown right now. They have known, but it's very young talent. And as we'll talk about in the next segment, that young talent doesn't always come through when you need it to. So, but yeah, like I said, it sucks for Dustin May. It sucks for the Dodgers. Sucks for us as fans, and we won't get to watch them. But unfortunately, we'll have to move on. The Dodgers will move on, and we'll be rooting for Dustin May to come back, and hopefully, we'll be here in a year talking about Dustin May coming back at some point. Right now, like literally a year from now, we'll be talking about, hey, Dustin May's coming back soon. That'll be a big boost to either one, the rotation, or two, the bullpen. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, he might need to change his last name though, because this is the last 2 months of May that he pitched in. He's had season-ending injuries, so maybe he needs to change his last name to November when bad things can't happen in November.
Yeah, true. All right, that's going to do it for this segment. We're going to talk about the actual game now, where the Dodgers had another handful of pitchers pitch. Some of them performed well, some of them didn't. The offense put up a good amount of runs, but the Dodgers weren't able to win. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Sleeper is a fantasy sports and real money gaming app focused on bringing people together through sports and gaming. Sleeper has become the fastest organically growing fantasy platform in the world, with over 5 million active users last year, while earning some of the highest levels of engagement per user in the industry. So what you can do with Sleeper, it's a real money product that connects friends over picks. Choose 2 to 8 of your favorite players from pregame, live, or even across different sports. Pick higher or lower than the predicted stats, and only on Sleeper you can get up to 100x payouts. So share with your friends, get rewarded together. Basically, you're just guessing what the guys are going to do and betting on what guys are going to do. So go check it out. And you can look as Freddie Freeman projected to go yard. Will he do it? Will he not? Is Mookie Betts projected to go yard? Will he do it? Will he not? Something like that. There's a lot of different things you can go up to. So if you are somebody that pays attention to stats and all those things, then Sleeper might be for you. And right now, use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. Sleeper's terms are used for details. It's currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, like I said, Dodgers had a handful of pitchers pitch last night, and some were better than others. There's a decision that was made to pitch Evan Phillips his third day in a row. We'll talk about that. But what led to that was that the Dodgers pitched Emmett Sheehan, who had been very consistent in his first 3 starts, and he didn't make it out of the 4th inning. He gave up 5 runs. He walked 4 guys, gave up 4 hits, just wasn't as sharp as he had been in the past. Gavin Stone, who was called up, gave the Dodgers 2 innings in relief after Caleb Ferguson came in and got the final out of the 4th, but he gave up 5 hits and a run, did strike out 3. But yeah, I think we talked about yesterday how this bullpen just can't get under itself because they're put in tough positions by the starting pitchers. And in last night's game, the Dodgers had 2 starting pitchers pitch, and they still barely got 5. They didn't get a full 6 innings out of them, made it tough. The Dodgers had a 1-run lead. They tried to go to somebody for the 3rd day in a row. Didn't quite work out. But yeah, I think Sheehan, I don't think there's really a concern. He just had a bad night. Couldn't, he got the first 2 outs of the game and then walked the next 3 guys and then ended up giving up a hit, giving up 2 runs. So it was just a tough night. Gavin Stone, again, he pitched well to get out of a jam, but still, 5 hits in 2 innings. Some still not clicking there, but, it's just a matter of how it's going right now for the Dodgers. Like I said, young talent, just sometimes it's that way. But also, again, bullpen can't get under itself because of the starting pitching.
Yeah, and there's some things about this game that's hard to be too frustrated about. Like, they scored 7 runs, and they handed Evan Phillips a 9th inning lead. Most of the time, if you score 7 runs and give your closer a lead going into the 9th inning, you're going to win the game. And obviously, like you said, Phillips pitching for the 3rd straight day. Dave Roberts said after the game that Phillips had told him before the game that he felt great, and Roberts decided then, I'll use him, but only in a safe situation. And so, it was the situation. It kind of reminded me of game 2 of the 2017 World Series, where when people talk about, did Dave Roberts pull Rich Hill too early or whatever? But the fact is, the Dodgers had a lead with Brandon Morrow and Kenley Jansen to close it out. And most of the time that year, that would have been great. And it just didn't work out that game for a lot of different reasons. And, in this game, yeah, it unfortunately didn't work out. But like you said, the relievers, I mean, Ferguson did great. He did give up a run scoring hit, but, overall, he got out of that inning. Yency Almonte looked great, struck out the side. There was some good stuff in this game. It just, Evan Phillips was the one who struggled. And, that's not going to happen very often. Like I said, most of the time, Evan Phillips is going to close that game out for you. And even if he had gotten the same calls the Pirates pitchers got, I'm not going to use up, I'm not going to use, I'm only allowed one more time of spending an episode complaining about the umpires, and I'm not going to use both of them before the All-Star break. But I am going to spend 5 seconds right now saying, holy crap, with Phillips not getting that call that led to the walk that Sawinski ended up scoring the tying run. Could have been the second out. And not that it was a strike, but it was a pitch that had been called a strike all night. And then Miguel Vargas to close the game out. Strike 2 and strike 3 to him were both out of the strike zone with the tying run on base. And it's not why the Dodgers lost. They were probably going to lose. Miguel Vargas probably wasn't going to hit a 3-run homer or a 2-run double or something. But I would have loved to see what the baseball players could do instead of seeing what the umpire could do.
Yeah. And, I think about, let's just say Sheehan and Stone had given them more, or even Sheehan had gone deeper and, they still use the same guys they did. So they used Ferguson, Stone, Almonte Bickford after Sheen, and then Phillips. I wonder if it was still that same score, 7-6, going into the ninth, and they hadn't used one of Almonte Bickford. Would Phillips still have been that guy just because it was a safe situation, or is it because they already used these other guys and it was a safe situation? That's kind of, I guess, I don't think we got an answer from Roberts, and I don't think that's a question you're going to ask anyways. But also, like I said, that's kind of what leads to getting to that point, is that you needed to use Ferguson and Almonte and Bickford, and then you got to a point where, okay, well now, Phillips on third day in a row in a safe situation is likely our best bet, or at the very least, he knew he was ready for this. He said he was going to be ready for this. And like I said, the stuff was maybe a little off in terms of command. Obviously, he walked two guys and notwithstanding that one call from the umpire, but everything else seemed right. So it's just one of those that wasn't his night.
Yeah. And with all that we're talking about the bullpen being overworked and stuff, if you do combine Sheehan and Stone into one starting pitcher, 5 2/3 innings, it's not terrible. The problem more in this game was the quality than the quantity that they got from those two guys. Those guys pitched 5 2/3 innings. Awesome. They allowed 6 runs, the only 6 runs that the Pirates scored until the 9th inning. If you can get 5 2/3 innings of 4 runs, you win the game, and this is kind of what we talked about the other day on Monday's episode, I guess, that if you can get 6 innings and 5 runs even from your starter, you've got a really good chance to win. And in this game, if the Dodgers get 6 innings and 5 runs, they probably win this game, but instead it was 5 2/3 innings and 6 runs, and sounds like a little difference, but the fact is it was the quality wasn't there. And like you said, Sheehan normally doesn't walk that many guys. He had only walked, I think he had walked 4 in his first 3 starts combined. He walked 4 in this game. It kind of reminds me of Caleb Ferguson's implosion against the Reds a few weeks ago, where the problem, he came in and he walked a bunch of dudes. He couldn't throw strikes. And in a way, it was easier to feel okay about Ferguson because, well, that's not usually his problem. And so that was just an off night. And that's probably the same here for Sheehan. And we've seen Ferguson has bounced back since then. And, if Sheehan can prove that this was just a one-night blip, I think he still is a reasonable option to make some quality starts for the Dodgers. And the fact is, he's going to have to, because with the state of the rotation, he's in it. He and Bobby Miller are here to stay for right now. And I think he's going to do better. It's just, it's one of those games where, especially with Johnny DeLuca hitting his first career home run to give them the lead in the bottom of the 8th, it should have been a storybook win for the Dodgers of overcoming, bouncing back. They were down 2 or 3 different times. The offense battled back, and it should have been a storybook win for them. And instead, the thing you wouldn't expect to happen, Evan Phillips giving up 3 runs, happened. So it's frustrating in that way, but not necessarily, for me, it's not demoralizing the way some losses are.
Yeah, and it's, like I said, always funny when these types of games, to see how people are going to blame Dave Roberts this time. And, if Dave Roberts had gone to anybody else that 9th inning and not Evan Phillips, even though he had said that Phillips was going to be down this game before the game, but if he goes to somebody else and they blow the game, Dave Roberts, why didn't you use Phillips? And then I've seen people complain about, using Ferguson so early in the game. But to that point, he was trying to save the game. Like, if a couple more hits there and it's 6-0, 5-6-0 instead of 4-0 and or whatever it was, and you might be out of the game anyways. So damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's just a matter of it didn't work out, and the guys that didn't work out were Sheehan and Stone today, but those were the guys they needed to get length in order to give themselves the best chance to win. They just didn't provide that best chance. And it's not one to defend Roberts, but it's just like, what do you want? Like, we could sit here every game, talk about a decision, and then say the opposite decision, and people would have been mad regardless. So it's always funny to see that during these games.
Yeah, and Brian Reynolds is probably one of the guys. The Dodgers currently only have one lefty in their bullpen. After they sent Victor Gonzalez and Alex Vesia down, Caleb Ferguson's their only lefty. And so you figure that Brian Reynolds and Jack Sawinski are the 2 guys that Dave Roberts is kind of eyeballing for. There's where we want to use Ferguson. And you know what? Tie game, 2 runners on, 2 outs, and Brian Reynolds coming up, who's much better left-handed than right-handed, it made total sense to go to Ferguson right there. The fact that Reynolds got a base hit to drive in a run, and Ferguson had to get the right-handed hitter out instead doesn't change the fact that, it made sense. If the game can be on the line in the 4th inning, and it kind of was, and Ferguson, he did allow a run scoring hit, but he also got out of the inning without too much damage being done. And the Dodgers did bounce back from that. So all in all, this is one of those games. It's definitely just on the players. And unfortunately tonight it was Evan Phillips.
Yeah. We'll get into the Dodgers missed a big chance. They've had a few of these chances here in the last couple of weeks, so it's kind of frustrating. We'll talk about that and just kind of talk about general scoreboard watching this early in the season, or this late in the season, depending on how you see it. That's what's on tap, so make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube if you search for Locked On Dodgers. And as always, remember, you can listen to the home broadcast of any Dodger game with SiriusXM or the SXM app. All you got to do is search Dodgers. You can also find us on there if you search for Locked On Dodgers. But home broadcast for any game you can't watch, search Dodgers on SiriusXM or the SXM app. All right, Jeff. So the final, it was a day of we lost Dustin May for the year, then we lost the game. And then on cherry on top, you see that the DBacks lost, the Giants lost. You lost the chance to gain a game and get within a game and a half of the Diamondbacks, pull up another game on the Giants. And, it obviously there's a lot of games left. And, a game in July, in theory, a loss in July could cost you, but, it doesn't really look that way when you get down to the wire. And, if you lose it in the last week or if you lose it now, it doesn't really matter. But either way, with the Dodgers, with the way this team is right now, which is, for the last month or so inconsistent, pitching wise and sometimes hitting wise. You want to take advantage of some of these games that you have in the bag, especially when everyone else around you is lost. So, I guess just a general conversation of how important it is right now, how scoreboard watching kind of works in July. And, just obviously it adds to the overall bad day for the Dodgers.
Yeah, coming into the day, the Dodgers were 2.5 behind the Diamondbacks and a game and a half ahead of the Giants. And before the Dodger game even started, both of those teams had lost. And so it really was a prime opportunity. And, there were several points in the game where it looked like the Dodgers were going to win this game. And you start getting visions of, being 2.5 games ahead of the Giants, kind of starting to put the Giants further in the rearview mirror, and being only a game and a half behind the D-backs and starting to think, well, maybe it is realistic even to catch them by the All-Star break. And it's still possible, but then they lose that game. And so now still 2.5 games back of the D-backs, a game and a half ahead of the Giants, and missing those opportunities. It's just, it's frustrating more than anything, and scoreboard watching has its place. And I don't think the players do much of it. I don't think, for the most part, they are thinking too much about the standings, because the fact is, talent-wise, if the Dodgers play well, things will take care of itself. I think the Dodgers, the D-backs are obviously a very good team. And I don't think this is like some of the other years where it was clear that the Dodgers are the best team and it's all going to work out. I do think, though, as a player, your mindset is, well, let's just win our games and it'll all shake out just fine. But as fans, we're definitely scoreboard watching, especially a day like this, where because of the holiday, there were a bunch of day games. And so you go in knowing that both of those teams had lost and just thinking, such a great opportunity. And then to blow it in the 9th inning the way they did. Yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah. And, when it comes down to, like I said, I think it's just the unknown. Usually we know, okay, the Dodgers are a much better team. For the most part, other than 2018, they've and 2018 because they had a weird year, and then 2021 because the Giants ended up, winning the division that year and pushing them all the way through. But for the most part, okay, the Dodgers are gonna be good still. They're gonna have a great second half, and you're not too worried, especially right now, game and a half back. They play the D-backs at least 3 more times, so it's one of those where until you don't, control your destiny per se. Maybe not as worrisome, which is, kind of what I've seen people like, the Diamondbacks are ahead. It's like, okay, but in theory, even if the Dodgers and Diamondbacks had the same record the rest of the season, and then the Dodgers beat them head to head, then the Dodgers would win the division, assuming the Giants don't make some crazy run. So there's still a lot of time in terms of that. They still play, the people that are ahead of them. But yeah, it's mostly for us. The Dodgers have bigger things on their mind, like winning the games. And but I think this is like, the year where you're like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. Because even in 2018, when the Dodgers were struggling, they were way better than the Rockies, but they just played very down to, they played it down to game 163. But they were a much better team than the Rockies. Right now, you could say they're a better team than the Diamondbacks, but it's not like a huge gap, especially if the Diamondbacks keep playing the way they're playing. And if they, end up making some moves, anything else, I could say they're, a better team than the Giants, but the Giants offense is pretty good. They just have, a sum of parts more so than the superstar talent that the Dodgers have. So it's a little bit of the unknown that makes this season a little bit different. And in terms of, why we're kind of watching the scoreboard in July, where before we weren't really watching scoreboards at all.
Yeah. And the fact is, in 2021, the Dodgers were a better team than the Giants. And the Giants beat them by a game in the division. It's so many things can happen that you'd hate to see games like this where you have a win and you blow it. But the fact is, I've always said that even in the best year, you're going to lose. Last year, the Dodgers lost 51 games, and I'm not going to get upset 51 times over the course of 6 months. I'll save all that emotion for October, or at least late September if it comes down to that. But this is one of those that, I don't know. Frustrating is the only word I can think of, because even then, it's like, like I said earlier, it wasn't demoralizing. It's not like, oh crap, this team just sucks. It was just, that was just one of those stupid baseball games,
Yeah, one or a couple positives. We talked about Johnny Lucca, first career home run, came in a big spot, got the curtain call from Dodger Stadium. That was a cool moment. I saw after the game he got the ball back. Then James Outman hit a pair of home runs. And, him getting back to even 70-80% of what he did that first month is going to be huge for the Dodgers. And essentially, the way they've been doing it now with Miguel Vargas struggling, Mookie is basically an infielder against right-handed pitching for the most part these days. He's at, whether he's at second or short, because of Hayward, because of Peralta playing well, hitting well. And if Outman can, just be a little bit better than the Dodgers, they still could use a trade for a bigger bat or a better bat, but it also makes them a little bit better overall lineup-wise, deeper, and kind of helps out.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Jeff, you got anything else before we head out?
No. Hopefully 2 more games in this series with the Pirates. Hopefully Dodgers can win both of those and then sweep the Angels again and head into the All-Star break on a 4-game winning streak.
Yeah, Dodgers tonight. Bobby Miller on the hill. He had a decent start last game, but I like a nice 6-7 inning start from him this time. Just kind of help everyone out and give them a breather. So we're nearing the All-Star break, but there's still 4 games left to be played and a lot of stuff that could happen here in the next 4 days. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to listen every day, and you can be part of the Everydayers, which is the club of people that listen to this show every single day, or at least close to every single day as possible, or have the intention of listening every single day. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vincent's91. DMs are open on all those accounts if you want to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. And remember, SiriusXM or the SXM app, search Dodgers if you want to listen to the home broadcast for any game. And I lost my train of thought because I went out of order.
Every weekday morning.
We're every weekday morning. So remember to tell your smart device to play a podcast Locked On Dodgers. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.